Welcome to the Social Podcast, brought to you by Another World Media and F the Box Movement. It's time for real talk with real people. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Social Podcast. I am your host, Mona Cedillo. Today, we are going to be speaking with Erika Righter. She is the owner of the Hope Tank. One of our co-hosts, Rebecca Zimmerman. Thank you, ladies. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm really excited that you guys are both on here because one, I know Rebecca, you wanted to get to know Erika more. I know a lot of people were really bummed and discouraged by the closing of the store on Broadway. But I want people to know that you're not done, that there's still work that you're doing. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about it.
I'm very excited. I'm actually kicking myself for not having patronized your store more when I had the chance.
I loved your store. I live in Baker, and your store was one of my guilty pleasures.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And not even guilty, right? Because all of the money went to support great things.
What was a catalyst for you to get the store started?
So I was a social worker. I worked predominantly in the foster care system with youth who were aging out of care. And I also worked with older adults. I constantly had people, saying things to me like, I don't know how you do it. And it's just all so big and all these issues that were happening in community. And I'm like, well, you're a part of it, whether you engage with it or not. And I really wanted to find a way to bridge that gap where people felt as if you don't have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of time to volunteer, that we could bring these organizations to people in a space where they already were going to be. So we're already going to be buying a birthday gift, or we want to get ourselves some fun socks or whatever it is. I took something that people were already doing where I knew they would be, to try to meet them there and offer them opportunities to engage with some really unique organizations. So it was really just to break down that wall and make it really simple, but also make it fun. I wanted to find places where we could plug people in, where it was really simple steps forward that then hopefully inspired them to do more and more.
That's one of the reasons why I loved going to your store. Was you're right. I mean, there can be moments where you're so knee deep in your work that you forget to have joy. You forget to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, do you remember what was the first organization that you started, having their items or their merchandise in your store?
The organizations are ones that I choose, and they didn't provide us with product. We actually purchased the product just like any regular store, and then we infuse the impact into that. So we took the donation that we would make through that sale. I started with a percentage model, which I do not any longer support. And I'll tell you why, which is if you're a small business, I was giving 10% off the top, by the way, which when you hear someone say a percentage model, be really, really conscious that usually if you see 1% to the planet, it's usually 1% after everyone has been paid, and net is very different than gross. Or a large business can have way more effective impact with a more intentional model versus percentage. At one point, I had 150 organizations. It was legendary. Because I was so excited to share. And that shifted over the years because I recognized that, I was sending a check for $3.27 to the Wild Animal Sanctuary. And so we scaled back the list to about between 10 and 15 over the last, I'd say 7 years. I think Same Cafe might have been my first organization. It's pretty wild.
It is.
Yeah.
Depending on when I would walk into the store, there was different organizations that would be, some would have prominent displays. And so for me,
Mhm.
it was part of that too. It was a part of learning about, oh, what is this organization? What do they
Well,
do?
and that's why it was important for me that the experience there was both that when you come in the store, you're greeted with what we're about,
Mhm.
because I wanted people to know, like, you can talk to us about this stuff. It's not just dependent on you spending money. Like, we want to have conversations. And then at checkout, my staff was well versed in what these organizations were about, so that we could leave you with a really succinct idea of what that organization does and how you could get involved. And then ideally, if you're giving that as a gift, you're spreading that message to them as well. So the touch points, hopefully, one person buys a pair of socks, then they wear it to, like, a festival, and then people are like, oh, those socks are dope. Oh yeah, well, I supported this organization, and then they're all learning about it.
So, like, did these organizations come to you, or
No.
did you seek out folks that you thought you could help?
Well, part of it is, obviously, I was in the nonprofit sector, and so I have very strong opinions about that sector, which means I have very, very stringent ways I go about vetting them, like community organizations or initiatives. And so, I get all the dirt, so I know what's happening. And if an organization is really doing what they're supposed to do, that includes how they treat their employees.
Mm.
And
Yes.
I worked in organizations that are very well known, that are kind of like there are a couple organizations that, like, most social workers in Denver have worked at, and they treat people like shit. And they know there's, like, another, new social worker coming out who needs that experience, and so they can just grind people out.
Oh,
Those
Erika, like, we
Yeah.
need to sit down and have coffee about this.
I've worked in a setting like that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say who or where,
Exactly.
but
I was like, when you said foster care, because I'm a
Yeah.
social worker too. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, foster care. Oh, I worked at a foster care place that was, like, so mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is part of my criteria, right? Is like, how are you as an organization? What's your board look like? Does your board reflect who you serve? Which is such a, like, slippery slope, right? And then I also really look for organizations where one person could make a difference. So if I were to ask an executive director, or frankly anybody from their organization, how can one person help without writing a check? And they don't have an answer for me quickly, they're not my kind of organization for Hope Tank, right? Really, it's mobilizing small intentional groups to make actions. And the other requisite for me was that they were making impact here in the United States. I have a lot of issues with predominantly white women, selling products that are alleging to help, predominantly women of color in other countries that are actually, like, totally full of shit.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Unless
feel like there was this organization, or it was a private business is what it was, but they tried to paint themselves as an organization, and they go over to India and they save these women. Well, I mean, save right there. You get that's not a good place to come from the very beginning. They protect these women from sex trafficking by giving them jobs. And it turns out it's just these, like, two wealthy white evangelicals, like, exporting their colonialism to India. And then,
Oh my God, I just, like, totally threw up in my mouth a little.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I bought a bunch of stuff from them when I was, like, a lot more naive. And I was like, well, at least this is, like, supporting people to, like, get started in a career path or whatever. No, they were, like, evangelizing these women and just making obscene amounts of money off them.
Oh man.
Yeah. One of the best resources I ever recommend for people is it's a documentary called Poverty Inc. And it is phenomenal because it breaks down what these so-called, like, cause brands and, like, social enterprises are really doing internationally, and not just like where they're leading people, but also like where they're actually being really dangerous and like really doing harm. And so like one of those companies that people love, it, you know, Tom Shoes.
Oh my God. I was just thinking that. I was like, I know exactly one that's doing it.
Yeah, like that is one of the worst companies you could support, like on the planet. Like they have done so much harm. If you go to Denver Startup Week of this year, I did a panel where we talked about Tom.
Good for you.
And like it's tricky, right? Because I know that makes people feel shitty. And my goal is always to be like, here's the information. Like, I don't say, oh, never ever shop at Amazon. I know that in and of itself is a privileged space to say, but I will challenge people to say, where can you replace some of your Amazon spending with a small business or locally, but also like educate yourself on what they're doing to like our environment here in Colorado, like what harm they're causing and what harm they're causing to humans who work for them. And Hope Tank was always about education towards things that create lasting change, not, you know, this sort of performative or guilt-driven giving, but more like plugging people into their own environment, their ecosystem, and looking at it through a different lens and going, okay, like where can I start just like right in my home? Do those incremental things, you start to literally look at people differently. I'm really proud of that, of like how they recycle or what they do, because I certainly don't set myself as this like perfect example. I say, I'm learning all the time. I'm fucking up all the time, but I'm, you know, taking that information, learning from someone who is an expert, and then trying to demonstrate with what I've learned, what I'm doing. And then if you're into that, you give it your shot and tell me how it went.
I was going to say, as a fellow white woman, I think that coming from that space of like, I'm educating myself, I'm going to fuck up. And it's not that it's fine. There's so much freedom in taking that stance.
I think it matters. And there are, I mean, I've seen both sides. I have seen non-people of color, you know, profess to be helping. And when you try to share some sort of, you know, maybe something of your culture, maybe just some information, and they immediately get defensive. And they're just like, oh, I'm just trying to help, you know? And then there are people like you, Erika, and people like Rebecca that, you know, a person of color drops some knowledge and you don't get offended. You actually listen and you're like, okay, like I got to do something different. I got to do better for all of us. You know, people of color can also be prejudiced. We can also have our own feelings about certain people. One of the things that I want to do with this podcast is to show people is, you know, these are people who are trying, you know, and we're not perfect. We're going to be making mistakes, but the point is we're trying.
In the trying, you can do a lot of harm. So I do also really, really do my best to kind of like call my people in, you know, the expectation, like there's a lot of like, you know, woke white women who just they maybe read a book or an article or something, and then they start just like riding roughshod all over everything and showing up in spaces where I'm like, hold on, a culture issue of like white women wanting to be liked so desperately, wanting to be seen as not that kind of white woman. And I'm like, I am they, we are we, wherever I am in the spectrum, those are still my people too. Like I am responsible, and I get exhausted, but I'm also like, but that's like, I don't get to step out of it because my friends don't have the opportunity to step out of it. And I have definitely had a lot of really painful encounters. And I've caused a lot of tears just by asking questions, you know. I think like to your point about that organization, when I kid you not, like so many times people have brought me products or sent me an email saying, I really, I think we're a great fit for Hope Tank. And then I go to their website and I like do my thing and I respond and say, I just have to be honest, it's like not really in line with like our values or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like some people really receive that beautifully and kind of go, shit, we got work to do.
Right.
And then others, they get wildly defensive and angry. And I'm okay with that. Like, it's fine.
Like, is this about this person's ego or like
Yeah.
the good
Well,
and
it is.
lack of harm
Yeah.
that they're creating in the community?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think so. One of the things, so one of the reasons why, there's like 1,000 reasons why this podcast is existing, but one of them is because there's so many amazing people that live here. There's so many organizations and so much work that's being done. That being said, there are a lot of organizations that are exactly like you said. They're just the name, that's it. And they have people on their boards or directors that, it's just a title. There's maybe they donate, so much money, or maybe they show up at a gala or two, maybe they have a party fundraiser, but that's it. That's as far as their work goes. And to me, if that's all that they're going to do, to me, it's just, one, you're wasting grant money. This is money that should be going towards some other organization that actually is doing the work. They're doing the education, they're doing the workshops, they're doing the videos, they're doing the programs, whatever it is. I have to say that there is a good number of nonprofit organizations here in Denver that they're not really doing anything. It's just a title. It's
the nonprofit culture here, the business culture here is not something I've ever experienced. It is so strange. It is not merit-based. It is based on who they went to high school with, or who's like homies with which politician, or whose family did this and that. And it was a real rude awakening to me as a worker, because I was like, oh, like, why don't we do this? And we can try this and da 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 da. And people are like, no. Like, we don't do things this way. These things that are often forgotten about what helps a person feel hopeful, even in the midst of being in really difficult circumstances. I think something that I already really miss about Hope Tank, where we were a really different kind of place where people would just drop in from the community all the time. And that included people who were in crisis and people who were isolated and people who were othered, to come in and just shoot the shit and also like share their lives and share their experiences. And then they would also get plugged in with resources and other things in the community. Some people know just the store, but like, we were doing workshops. There's a lot happening behind that. And that's what, this next space that we're going to be, I'm signing a lease on Sunday.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. So, the next phase is going to be much more of that work, of what I've learned. We are a resource for people, and where my strengths are and what I can bring to community in different ways. That almost like the store itself was actually holding back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So where's your new location?
Oh my God. Well, no one really knows.
It's a
secret. It's a secret.
Let me tell you, finding a space in Denver is so outrageous. It's so horrible. It's so corrupt.
Let's talk about that. Can we take a few minutes and talk about what happened? Because there's so many businesses other than yours that have been here for a while that are getting priced out. Can you talk about what happened as far as the pricing and what led to the store being closed?
I didn't come from a business background. I was a social worker. I didn't go through a program. I didn't have, mentors and all these things. And so when I signed my lease on the Broadway shop, I was a subleaser. And so what that means is I was paying 3 times what the guy I was renting from paid to the owner.
What?
So I was already paying like a lot, right? Lease was up. And right when COVID hit, thankfully, the owner of the building was wonderful to me. And he reduced my rent. My rent went down $1,000 a month.
Wow.
But I mean, my income had dropped, like 50%. So, I don't think people get like retail hasn't come back. It wasn't doing well prior to COVID. I mean, small businesses were suffering and people do not seem to get that. And I was just on Brother Jeff's and he gave me so much grief because I did the thing that you should never do, which is I just went month to month on like a handshake agreement.
Oof.
And like all this stuff happened. I had a lot of family stuff happen. And so it was like, yeah, we'll do a lease. Like he didn't care. Unbeknownst to me, he's basically like selling the building to someone, like she's leasing to own. So I guess it's a way that these property owners can avoid like a huge amount of tax. This woman marches into my business literally in front of customers, was demanding to see me. I'm the new landlord. Where is she?
Ew.
I'm like, what the hell? And she just starts talking like at me in front of customers. I was like, I'm sorry, can we go outside? And she's like, yeah, like I'm going to be owning the building. And I was like, whoa, what? So he didn't tell any of us. I, of course, panicked and I met with her and her son. It's like I could tell that there was nothing good coming. Come to find out, they own several properties that are sitting just in squalor. Because I also learned that these owners, they get a break because they can write off whatever they could be getting for the place. So that's why they're like sitting on these empty spaces until they get the blood money they want.
Ew.
Oh my goodness.
Who are these people? Can we talk about them?
Property owners.
Well, by the way,
real estate investors. That's what it is. And that's the same problem we're having with our house.
I want names.
Yeah, well, and I will tell you, there's a guy who owns a huge chunk of the block of Broadway who treated my dear friend Alicia, who owns Soul Tribe. I mean, the stories I could tell about that person, and she named him in the press. Like his name is William Feinberg, and he rents to almost predominantly all women and many women of color. Not only like treated people terribly, he does not do what he's supposed to. But her rent was at $8,000 a month when she was killed. So her staff is now trying to make that rent, just so we're clear. Okay.
Erica, where I could like go get a tattoo right now and that would help them out.
Oh, 100%.
I almost never need an excuse for it.
I'm hearing the beginning of a woman's night, of a girl's night. Just gonna throw it out there.
Yes, please.
I'm due a tattoo. I'm due ink too, just so you know.
Well, I can tell you it's a pretty special place to be. It really is.
When Alicia owned Twisted Soul.
Oh, yeah. Really? Okay.
It is a quote unquote lower back tattoo.
Oh boy.
I think it's actually called a tramp stamp.
That's what I was avoiding saying.
I'm sorry. No. I'm not a good friend. I'm sorry. My bad.
No, I love it. That's what I call it. Like, we don't slut shame here, right? It's
no, we don't. We don't, because some of us like sex and there's no shame in that.
Exactly.
So these gross people came in and did some negotiation.
Yeah. What she told me was she knew she could get $37 a square foot. That's not even like within the realm of reasonable. And I mean, I've been down there 10 years. I can tell you, like, that's not anywhere close to what people are getting for spaces, let alone in other areas that are like they're just, that's outrageous. So what she wanted me to pay was like, in her estimation, was a discount. And And in my estimation, it was more than I was paying when I was paying this other subleaser. Like almost, I mean, it was crazy. And I just can't justify that anymore. And so I took it as a sign and I really listened. I had already been planning to make huge changes with the structure of Hope Tank. And honestly, it was like the sign for me that this wasn't it. Like, we're not going to do this. It doesn't feel right anymore. I don't want to deal with this person. And then I looked up that she was sitting on these properties and I was like, no, this isn't right. I pulled the plug. And prior to telling her, like, we had set a time to negotiate, and I put it out into community that we were leaving. And then she emailed me like a notice to vacate.
What?
And it was so aggressive.
So
and
How
so
old are
scary.
we? How old are we?
And then the shooting happened. And I am honestly grateful to be gone. Not everyone knew that, Alicia was like one of my closest friends. And she did the mural in our place, but she and I like would come in each other's spaces through the back door, like, every day. So she is infused in every part of my business, including like my business plans and my, like we confided in each other and went to each other about everything. Yeah. And so she had already been really pushing me when that happened with the woman. She was like, babe, it's time. Like, it's enough. Like, it's enough. It's not meant to be anymore. And so it was like the confirmation, and, to be a door away from the like worst day of our lives. Like, I couldn't do it anymore.
Were you working that night?
I was not. Shannon was working, but no, I wasn't. And so I started that night. I started getting texts because like all over the news, it was showing Hope Tank because like we're, right next to it. And so people were calling me. Those of us in the close circle, we knew before. Thankfully, we knew before everybody knew, so we could have a night to just process. But
do you want to hear something wild? I was in the area. I wasn't at your store. I was not at the studio, but I was in that area when it started. And I was just so focused on what I had to do that I wasn't even, I heard the paramedics, I could hear the police cars, but I didn't put anything together. And at one point I actually went to Belmar. I was in that shopping area, like right around the time that person was there. But, and again, I saw the police, I saw them all lining up on the street. I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, oh, it's probably something crazy. I don't know. I did my shopping and then I got home. And when I got home, my phone started blowing up.
The guy that he murdered was 2 blocks from me, right on Cheeseman Park. And actually, I remember now that Christopher and I were texting that night, and he was like, Mona was just right there.
I was like literally like a store away when it started. And then I ended up in Belmar. And again, like that's where it ended. And and it was just, and Christopher was just like, what are the odds? And I was like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because I didn't know who was shot.
Right.
And so it wasn't until
I think Erika, you and Shannon did, but other than that, I don't think anyone really knew in the beginning.
Didn't know. And then in the morning, I can't even remember what time, but I remember again, somebody texted me and said who it was. And I just like, I lost it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, why would anyone, to me, Alicia, she was her own universe. She was one of the first and main people that like, you don't have to live in a box. You don't have to be this perfect person. Be who you are. And that's actually more beautiful.
Yes.
Because for a while there, I was practically killing myself trying to be a perfect mom while being a single mom.
So she is somebody who brought me in very intentionally into Indigenous spaces. And so when this happened, I knew that I just needed to be like down there. So like we closed for a week. It became like the place. Like people brought things for Soul Tribe. I was like, you know, preserving things from the altar for her child. What was incredible was we had so many healers taking up space and reclaiming, and it was a very public example of like how Indigenous people mourn, heal, and how we do that as a community, and like the mutual aid that is practiced, right? Like we were like the block moms. Everyone called us that, right? So like I knew I needed to be there for like her crew. Put up something in like a private Facebook group. And I was like, hey, you know, like if people want to donate like gift cards or Visa cards or whatever, or to like small businesses for coffee, like 4 of her staff are vegan. So I was like, go hit up Nooch and like, you know, just buy up all the gift cards. Mm-hmm. And then people started messaging me saying, hey, if like, can I just Venmo you? And within like 3 days, I had $10,000.
Wow.
And thousands of dollars worth of gift cards that like every day, like I could just give out, and I would just go over and to Soul Tribe and bring them. And like, we had people bring groceries. We had healers coming and making sure I was okay, and like doing ceremony in the alley, and like all this stuff was happening. Mm-hmm. And it was a beautiful tribute to like how we as community can do things differently in the face of a tragedy.
It was beautiful.
It was amazing.
It was. And I often feel things like that happen that are terrorism. And to me, that absolutely was, and motivated by those same kind of motivations. It almost feels like there's like a vacuum for a long time. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful expressions of grief, and then, you know, like you said, like you hustling to like make sure people are taken care of, make sure people have food on their plates, in these incredibly difficult times. Like you can never fill that vacuum, but it was like a blossoming within the vacuum. It was a beautiful, wonderful thing to watch. And since our topic is hope, like I know that as someone who was, you know, acquainted with multiple of the victims and watched communities that I love really suffering, like that provided a lot of hope in those dark days.
I think, you know, when something happens like that, you know, everyone wants to help. And, you know, this amazing artist, Aloria Weaver, you know, everyone has these prints of Alicia, right? Like they're everywhere. Mm-hmm. Right. And she had done this piece long before this happened. And so Aloria was like, you know, oh, I'm going to ship these to people. And I was like, what are you doing? And so she just like, they brought the prints to Hope Tank, because I was like, everyone's coming here. So just let us help you distribute those. The layers of what's happening are many. Mm-hmm. And like things they were doing for my kids, you know, because my kids are not okay. You know, they're not okay. You're so wrapped up in that space, and that's not what it is. That intentional mutual aid, that like, I know who's got my back. I also know like when tragedies happen, people show up who are full of shit, who like want that attention and need that light and all that stuff. And you just have to let that happen too. Like that is part of it, right? Like there are always going to be nuances to this stuff. It was beautiful, and it continues to be, right? Like last week I just lost is another Indigenous healer who it was devastating. And to know how much like they have both influenced every single thing I do, that's the only reason I'm like still functioning, is right. Because they gave me tools and brought me into spaces where other people will pick up the pieces.
You know, I think about Alicia, and I think about how selfless she was, you know, like the example you gave about her saying, you know, it's time to move on. You know, some people would have said, you know, no, don't, I'm going to miss you. You know, well, I don't want to be here by myself, or, you know, and instead it was very much so supportive of your next step, and not even
Yeah.
worried about, you know, your friendship. She wasn't threatened at all. It was just, hey, it's time to level. It's time to go up, you know, like
Yeah.
go for it, do it, get it. When I saw all the people that were, like you said, the ceremonies that were being had, the prayers, the way people were showing up, it just seemed like it was a confirmation of who she was. It was just such a beautiful, powerful way to honor her, you know. And I know sometimes when people pass, people have different responses to them. It was very intentional, and to see the community come together and to see people, you know, doing ceremony, and to see people giving, and see people giving back, and see people watching out for her people. To this day, I just think of how people are watching out for her, you know, her family. And she would have wanted that. About just some people that don't know, like, what do we do now? She's gone. What do we do now? And it's like, you guys are doing exactly what she would want you to do.
I would say two things. One is that she would be really pissed that Alyssa, who was also killed, I mean, Alyssa was an incredible human being. There were people who were like, you know, pressuring me, like, we're going to do a mural and we're going to do this. And I was like, no, like, it's been 5 minutes and she did not roll that way. She was
Right.
intentional and thoughtful. And guess what? It's not going to be a white woman doing it. You know, she and I had a lot we were planning to work on. And a lot of that was in the artist community in Denver. And she brought me into stuff like the last thing that it was so weird. I did a panel at Redline, and then I was like, oh my God, the last time I was in there was with her.
Wow.
And she had told me, like, I want you to come to this thing for like women in the mural scene. And I was like, okay. And so I show up and she's like, no. And I'm like at a mic. Like, I was like, wait, well, I thought I was like coming to listen to a thing. And she's like, nah, you're like a part of this conversation. And it ended up, I was the only non-artist. And she knew if she had told me, I would have like overthought it and tried to prepare and like all this stuff. And she was like, nah, there's your mic. And like, it was nuts. And it was beautiful though, because you know, like we knew we complemented each other's skill sets. So we both, like, she pushed me so hard and I pushed her a lot. And she did a lot of stuff in the last couple of years that she definitely didn't want to, because I was like, too bad, you got to go be on this panel and you need to be the voice on this thing about this mural and whatever. And she left a library of resources in the form of videos. Like, go look her up. There's tons of stuff. In fact, there's a video that I posted, and it's crazy because it's 2 years today. It just came back up in my feed. Alyssa leading. It was right when we had to board up all our shops and we were cracking up. It was terrible. It was a terrible day. It was terrible. It was like COVID we weren't, you know, like we didn't know what was happening. It was the protests. Everything was happening. And so we were over at Soul Tribe just like freaking out, and, you know, and Alyssa was like, let's do this thing. And I was like, I'm going to videotape this. And thank God I did. And it's her leading this like body tapping exercise.
Oh yeah.
And it's like 2 minutes.
I love tapping. That's a game changer.
So it's Casey who runs the shop, Alyssa and Alicia. And it's, you know, it's got a couple thousand views and people just keep sharing it. And so when Jimmy shared it, it was like, damn, like, it's like the thing we all needed, you know, like they all gave us things that we can still access.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and Alyssa was a yoga teacher, which is how I met her, you know, before she even got into tattooing. And just was sort of the antithesis to like the very pretentious yoga scene that that exists in Denver.
Well, and she also, like, that was right at the time that people were exposing what was happening with the owner of Kindness Yoga.
Yes.
And she had to make that decision whether to say something or not. And she did. She chose to speak out about her experience, which was terrible. Well, the guy who started Kindness Yoga, you know, wealthy white guy, you know, he built this sort of little mini empire. And I met him years ago and I was like, nope, not for me. And again, it's, you know, like you're dealing with yoga, which is stolen.
Yep.
And
Say that louder. Say that louder.
so, you know, like this white straight man, I mean, all of it is just ridiculous. There was rampant racism, sexism, transphobia, like you name it, and it was happening, and it was reported and all this stuff, and nothing happened. And so someone started like an anonymous Instagram post, and it took him down. But the joke is, not only did he like basically dismiss it, he like used COVID as the reason they were closing. And it's like, no, it's because people were brave enough to be like, this is unacceptable. Here's what really happened. And then it happened with, you know, across the street from us with Buffalo Exchange.
Do you know that the new Place Scout is closed now?
Yeah.
I walked by there the other day and I was like, what just happened?
Yeah, she's trying to find a space, put her on the list of women in town trying to find spaces that don't exist for us.
I wish like we could just raise the funds and have like a collective space for everyone.
Well, the truth is, like, we could already be doing that. There are so many layers to this problem, but what the city likes to do is say, well, they have no power over, you know, the private sector, which is just not true. They've rolled out yet one more predatory bullshit project that I'm going to get a lot of grief for calling out, but I am not the first one to say it. And they're trying to like incentivize micro businesses to do a pop-up business on the 16th Street Mall. And what they're not saying is the mall will be under construction. And they're giving them 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
Name me a business that could survive at a construction. Like, that's just, we know this, right? Basics.
Yeah.
So and the 16th Street Mall is already like drowning. They can't get people to rent spaces for good reason.
Right.
And so they're trying to like make it seem like this is some equity move, and it's bullshit.
It kind of reminds me of like these big, tall, high-rise buildings that are going up, and there's not enough street for all the cars that are going to be going back and forth. And or some of these apartments that are going up and there's not enough parking. Like, no one's even, you know, and to me, it just makes no sense. I feel like it should be some sort of policy. Like, if you're going to put this building up, if you're going to put up this condominium, these apartments, this business, make damn sure that there's parking. There's parking for your employees, or there's parking for your tenants. There's, or, you know, or the street is wide enough for the traffic that's going to start going through. It's you know, it's such a hot mess to me.
It's all done so haphazardly. I'll admit, you know, I'm from Boston. I'm a city kid, and I'm like, I'm just seeing the people who are making decisions about what a city should look like and be like are so unqualified to be the people in those positions. And that again speaks to like a very Denver thing, which is like, it's not the person most qualified. It's the person with the right connection. And so you see these disastrous projects happening. And, you know, like I was looking at properties on Welton Street. One day they're up for rent and we're all excited, right? But they're already asking like a ridiculous amount. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe we can figure it out. And then the next day they're selling them.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, does she want to buy this building for like $900,000? Like, what? So, you know, this, there's a group of us who are all looking at space, and like we're all looking at the same 5 places. And
Right.
the thing that's really frustrating, and I think what Brother Jeff really speaks to well,
Mhm.
is like a lot of the leaders and politicians who love to talk about small business, it's all talk. They can't
Right.
actually do anything. And so
Mhm.
like, if Hope Tank was such a treasure and such an important anchor institution, like, why has no one stepped forward to help me with finding a space? No one,
Yeah.
except community. And so how did I find the new space that we're going to be in? Through a community member saying, yo, there's this space, you got to go look at it. I did that day. I'm like, that's it.
Mhm.
And I might have found the first and only like legitimately community minded landlord in all of Denver
Thank God.
who
Yeah.
is
I mean, who
charging
is
me
this?
like a below market rate and like cares about which tenant is in there and has lived in that neighborhood forever.
Right.
And I
Well,
can share that we will officially be in the Whittier neighborhood.
Nice.
I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what happens.
Whittier is fantastic. I'm so excited too.
I mean, it happens too with regards to employment, is you have exactly like you said, Erica, you have these people that are saying, oh, it's about community, but yet you're going to make decisions that are actually bad for the community. Or you have these bosses or directors that are saying, we're all about the community, but yet when it comes to hiring, they bring people in from out of state. They don't hire, they don't make it a point to hire local. Find the people that are here in Denver. Find your people that are here in Westminster, North Glen, wherever. No, they want to do a nationwide search and bring in people from Arkansas, New York, whatever. And in local people, we miss out on jobs.
Right.
Right.
So that they can then bring those people in to occupy the so-called luxury apartments that none of us who are from here can afford.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to somebody, man, this was months ago. This couple from New York, they bought this house over at Cap Hill. Beautiful house, beautiful house. But I know for a fact, like if you were to look somewhere like maybe Minnesota or something, or Iowa or whatever, you could probably buy this house for like under 400 grand, right? This couple was ecstatic because they said we only had to pay 900,000.
Oh my God.
And I
Yeah.
was like, what? And they said, oh yeah, it would have costed over $1 million in New York.
That's why, so what I'm hoping with this new space and what people are going to have to like get their brains around is like, we're not going to have the same store. It's not going to be a store.
It's not going to be a store.
It's not going to be a store. The only products we are doing will be online.
Okay.
And we're going to focus on our gift baskets and boxes, and then really, really working much more closely with all of these micro businesses that we've worked with over the years to help fill some of those gaps where, they go through like these microfinance groups, they help them with a business plan and, like kind of the foundational stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they like all come to me afterwards. And they're like, we don't know how do we do labels? How do we do pricing? How do we do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, this is crazy. So I'm hoping to work more in partnership with those organizations so that we can be a place where like a soft landing. Let's like make that public. Here are all the businesses that are looking for a space. This one needs, a commercial kitchen or this and that. And like work collaboratively. These places that do exist, all the conversation is happening behind closed doors. And so then they're not giving people the opportunity to be a part of something that, they could really bring something to. I think we need to flip the script and say, hey, these businesses are actually an asset. Like this place that we're going in Whittier, this couple owns it. They're an older Black couple. They are so excited to have Hope Tank, like so excited.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to see. We want to see people who say, oh, this is an asset to our space, to our neighborhood, to the businesses around us. Like when I was on Broadway, we were one of 26 women-owned businesses in 4 blocks. Like, that matters to
Right.
a community. We really underestimate the power of who is in that space
Yeah.
and what that actually impacts in a community. And so what I'm hoping to do is create a space where people can come together on a more regular basis and share resources and bring people in to talk about these various things that people need for their micro business. And again, I say micro business because a small business could be 500 employees. That's not who we are rolling with, right? And like, I love doing really weird creative projects that bring people together who didn't know they needed to know each other, but then they're like, oh my God, look what we can do.
Yeah, the power of collaboration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I firmly believe in that. And, that was really interesting that you brought up the whole situation happening with businesses, because I see it happening at places of employment. I see it happening as far as residences, is these backdoor deals. To me, it feels like it's a response to people of color have started to own businesses. They started getting education. They are moving into spaces that we weren't welcome at before. And
Mm-hmm.
and it just seems like and again, it doesn't matter if it's DPS, it doesn't matter if it's housing, it doesn't matter if it's business. Is you have these people that are making these deals, these shady deals or these crappy deals, whatever it is, but they're making these deals to still try to stop us from
Yes.
Yeah.
succeeding.
Like, I haven't said anything publicly, but like, there was one business owner on the block on Broadway who is a newcomer, a man who harasses a lot of people. And he tried to get our block party shut down. And I mean, it was like horrendous. He was harassing me. It was horrendous.
Now, I'm all about people moving and bettering their lives, but there's a huge
Mhm.
difference between moving into a space to better your life and moving into a space and trying to occupy it like it's all yours.
It sounds like what you have envisioned for the future of Hope Tank really is going to help some of these micro business owners feel a little less isolated.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's all I was going to point out. And now you, Mona.
Thanks. You're right on the spot with the fact that there are small businesses that they're trying to compete with these larger businesses, with these larger corporations. Then yeah, it would make sense, and it is only fair that the other companies, these smaller companies, micro businesses, that they also have some sort of support.
I have been a thorn to our mayor for a while.
Yay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. But
You get nothing but hype here for that.
I mean, he was seated next to me at an event, and he like awkwardly sort of said, well, I went to a small business. I just want you to know, I went to small business on Small Business Saturday, and I went, cool. What about the other 364 days out of the year?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, touche. And
Oh,
that's the problem, right? Right before his reelection, he and I had a very rare, apparently, one-on-one with him and one of his staff. And we talked about all of this stuff. We talked about, the city itself has incredible buying power.
mm-hmm.
And I was really frustrated because I had started this inclusive guide in 2017. And I'm like, I've sent your office caterers who are like women-owned, Black-owned businesses. I've sent you all, alternatives to where your offices are spending money. Like, you're catering in all the time. You're doing all these things. And you never do it, like, ever. I remind people of all the time is they're not capturing that data, which is what I also am very focused on. Is really, I want to get some funding around this guide that we created and really build it out more, because when you start a business, there's no box to check if it's woman-owned, Black-owned, Indigenous-owned, anything.
Right.
So we don't even have the data to then, and that data is super powerful, right? Like
I was just going to say data is where it's at, man.
Yeah.
That is how laws get changed. That's how policies get changed. That's how funding happens is data.
So I said to him, you could right now make the lives of small business owners change.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, like if the city of Denver prioritized, literally went through the roster of every department, how many gift cards they buy for people on their birthdays and when they order in catering and when they take people out to lunch and right?
Yeah.
And every event, they have all these vendors and all this other stuff. Well, if it's under 10K, you do not have to be certified. So they could literally change people's lives. And of course, he's like, I can't believe we haven't talked about like this. He's like, you should be talking with these people in the economics division, all this stuff. And we should be supporting this guide. And I'm like, yes, like, okay, let's do it. And I said, the alternative is you could also just give people a bunch of buildings in community or both. Right. But like they could have made the difference. And so they continue to choose not to. And, they sent me through to a couple people and it went nowhere. Not every small business owner aspires to be on Shark Tank. Some of us just want to pay our mortgage, live in the community in which we have our business, take our kids on a trip once a year, have a car that doesn't break down because you can't rely on public transportation and live in Denver and live our lives.
Some of these people that are holding significant positions, they're not from here, and they're kind of like just hired to be the yes people. They're going to come in and just yep, change this. They don't know the city, they don't know the history of a community. They're just like, yep, get rid of this, do this, buy this, raise that. Yep, everything's good.
Feels like the only motive is profit. And these aren't people with a sense of community or place and I'm not saying that people from here aren't doing it too, because they certainly are. But there's this feeling of just, well, if somebody makes money, then it's fine.
One of the reasons why I love you and I love your business and I love what you're doing, because you're bringing it all back. You're bringing it all back to the basics and you're empowering people. And I'm all about that.
People can still shop online with us though. And I don't know that people know that.
Oh, okay. Where can they shop? Throw that out there. Let's see.
You just go to hopetank.org and hit shop.
And especially, I know for me after the pandemic, like I don't even leave my house. Like I don't go out into public spaces, but there was that energy you got from just interacting with other humans and people that weren't necessarily already a part of your circle.
I know that there were times that I intentionally went into the store because I saw Shannon. Because I knew when I walked in, she's like, "Hi, Mona." It was really comforting. It was exactly like you said. Like, oh, look at someone's acknowledging me. Somebody knows my name.
When you work in a small business, a brick and mortar, it can be a transformative experience.
I'm just so excited for your next steps. And I'm already on your website looking at stuff.
Okay.
Oh yeah. If anybody wants to, and if anybody out there is interested, I do like wearing really cool socks. So if anybody wants to go online and buy a pair of socks and send it to me, I will wear them gladly.
She's got some great fingerless gloves with like a little bird too, and hot sauce.
Yep.
Awesome. That's awesome. Can you share with people what we're going to be leaving with?
Yeah, we are going to be jamming out to a song called Shades Down by Redlands. Their album Vacation Apocalypse is what this is coming from, and you can find them on Spotify.
Right on.
If I could stay tonight, you could do what you want, but I just need a ride. We could go where you want, but you don't know where to go. No, I just don't care. Just pour me a drink for the road. I'm driving around downtown with my shades down. I'm going up and I never wanna come down. I think I'm looking for something. I'll find my way around. I got my shades down, 'cause it was feeling right with no to me.